blood, steel, and fangs. This was not Rome's marble glory, not the proud speeches of the Senate, not the verses of poets carved into eternity. This was something darker, something older. The weapon Rome tried to hide in shadows. The battlefield sleeps beneath a pale sky. Mist curls low, clinging to the earth like a shroud. The air is damp, heavy with silence, as if the world itself is holding its breath. And then, iron moves. The Roman legions stand in perfect order, row upon row, their shields gleaming faintly through the fog. The testudo, the wall of iron, stretches across the horizon. Spears bristle like the spines of some massive beast waiting to strike. Behind them, the red banners of Rome flutter in the weak dawn wind, golden eagles catching the first light of morning. To the enemy watching from across the field, it must already seem hopeless. An empire marches with discipline sharper than any sword. But what they do not yet see, what they do not yet know, is that today they face more than men. Listen, beneath the shifting of shields, the creak of leather straps, the soft stamping of armored feet, another sound begins to rise. Low, guttural, ancient, a growl. Not one, not two, dozens, hundreds. The kind of sound that claws at something buried deep inside the human soul. The sound every man, no matter how brave, was born to fear. The sound that says, a predator is near. The fog stirs. Shapes shift within it. Hulking, massive, straining against chains. The first enemy scouts catch sight of them. Shadows with shoulders broad as lions, jaws wide as a man's skull, eyes gleaming with a feral hunger. The handlers, Roman soldiers in leather armor, fight to restrain them. Spiked collars dig into thick necks as the beasts lunge, froth dripping from snapping jaws. The enemy line wavers. They came expecting swords and spears. They did not come expecting this, for this was Rome's forgotten weapon. The Meletian hounds, not soldiers, not men, but death walking on four legs. And as the horns of Rome prepare to sound, one truth becomes clear. The battle about to begin will not be remembered for the clash of iron, but for the growls in the mist that froze men where they stood. Long before Rome called them weapons, the Meletian hounds had another name, guardians of blood and bone. They were born in the wild mountains of Epirus, where shepherds fought a daily war against wolves, bears, and even lions that prowled the rugged land. For ordinary dogs, these predators meant death. But not for the Meletians. Bred massive, shoulders thick with muscle, jaws powerful enough to crush bone, they were not pets. They were protectors, living walls of flesh and fury, forged by necessity, hardened by survival. At night, their growls rolled through the mountain valleys, carrying a warning older than civilization itself. Come no closer. This land is guarded by death. When Rome spread across the Mediterranean, it devoured everything in its path. Land, gold, men. But when it saw the Meletian hounds, Rome saw something different. Not just guardians, not just beasts, but potential. Rome took them, and Rome transformed them. They were no longer the loyal guardians of shepherds. They became something far more terrible. Iron collars studded with spikes, designed not only to restrain, but to wound any enemy foolish enough to grab them. Bronze plates strapped across their chests and backs, turning fur and flesh into living armor. Some were even fitted with harnesses that carried knives or hooks, so that when the dogs leapt, they struck like blades of living steel. And for Rome's darkest tactics, torches tied to their backs. Flames licked their fur, but the hounds did not retreat. They charged forward, fire turning them into demons of war, hurling themselves into enemy ranks, igniting chaos in the night. Can you picture it? The horns of Rome blaring across a battlefield, chains straining until they finally snap loose. And suddenly, silence is gone, replaced by madness. The earth shakes beneath a tide of beasts. Their growls rise into a roar that drowns the clash of swords. Men scream. Horses rear, eyes wide with terror at the scent of blood and smoke. Shields shatter beneath jaws stronger than iron. Spears snap like twigs as the beasts crash into the line. There is no strategy against them. No formation, no order, no shield wall can stand when primal fear takes hold. Because this was Rome's secret truth. The war dogs were not meant to win battles with teeth alone. They were meant to tear apart the spirit of an army before the first sword ever struck. One soldier breaks and runs, then another, and soon the enemy line collapses, not from wounds, but from terror. That was the genius of the Molossan hounds. Rome had mastered not just conquest of land, but conquest of the human heart. And fear was the sharpest weapon it ever forged. The Molossan hounds had become more than weapons of war. In the silence of night, when the legions slept, they remained awake. Tethered at the edge of camp, their growls rolled out into the dark forests and fields like invisible walls. A spy could creep past the sentries, a shadow might slip between tents, but no man could silence the nose, the ears, the instinct of the hound. One crack of a twig, one faint rustle in the brush, and a shape would lunge from the dark, heavy and fast as death. Many enemies never even reached the Roman walls. Their screams were cut short in the blackness beyond the firelight. By day, the same beasts marched beside prisoners. Long chains of defeated men, Gauls, Greeks, Germans, dragged through dust with their hands bound, their spirits broken. But it was not the iron links that kept them obedient. It was the sound of claws scraping the ground beside them, the flash of yellow eyes when they dared look sideways. The prisoners did not test their chains, because they knew the chains would not kill them. The hounds would, and in Rome itself, the beasts took on an even darker role. Beneath the blazing sun, the arena roared with tens of thousands of voices. Gates opened, and from the shadows surged the hounds, collars bristling with iron, jaws frothing with hunger. They were unleashed upon criminals, deserters, rebels, men condemned not just to die, but to be torn apart for the pleasure of the crowd. The people cheered as blood sprayed across golden sand, as snarls drowned out human cries. Rome did not only destroy its enemies, it made a spectacle of their destruction. At times the hounds were thrown against lions and leopards, brought from Africa to prove Rome's supremacy over all the wild world. Fur, claws, and fangs clashed in a frenzy while the people screamed for blood. Some hounds fell, many did not. Either way, the crowd was satisfied. To them, it was entertainment. To Rome's leaders, it was a display of power. But not all who watched were convinced it was mere spectacle. Whispers spread among the soldiers, and even among generals, that these beasts were touched by the divine, that the spirit of Mars himself, the god of war, lived within their fury. When the chains snapped and the dogs charged, some believed it was not only flesh and bone that struck, but the hand of a god. And yet there was something else, something the Romans could not control. For when a handler fell, many of the hounds did not flee, did not seek survival. They stood over the body, teeth bared, eyes wild, daring anyone to come close. Some lay down across their master's corpse and refused food, refused water, until death came for them as well. That kind of loyalty was not human. It was not rational. It was something deeper, more terrible. A bond as fierce as war itself. And it planted a question in the hearts of men. What happens when beasts trained to fear nothing begin to inspire fear in those who command them? The Molossan hounds marched with the legions far beyond the heart of Rome. From the frozen forests of Germania to the burning sands of Africa, they followed the eagle's standards into every corner of the known world. They crossed rivers swollen with ice, mountains where men struggled to breathe, and seas that seemed endless. And wherever they went, the stories of their fury went first. Whispers of monsters on chains, shadows with teeth of iron. Imagine the terror of a Gallic village under moonlight. The night is still, the only sound the soft shuffle of feet and the distant bark of chained beasts. Then suddenly, chaos. Doors are smashed open. Warriors drag from their beds. And through the dark, the hounds surge forward, unleashed like demons born of smoke and shadow. Their growls mix with screams as they tear through the night, dragging men down, scattering defenders before the real Roman soldiers even arrive. Fear alone breaks the village long before dawn. But with every campaign, the cost grew heavier. Handlers began to whisper of beasts that never calmed after battle. Dogs whose eyes burned with a frenzy no chain could restrain. They tore at their bonds, foamed at the mouth, lunged at shadows long after the fighting was done. These are not the guardians once bred in Epirus. These were creatures forged by Rome's hunger for conquest, scarred, blood-soaked, driven half-mad by endless slaughter. Among the soldiers, fear began to spread. Around campfires at night, voices lowered when the hound were near. Men muttered that these were not dogs anymore, but demons made flesh. Not born of earth, but of war itself. Some swore they had seen a hound turn on its handler in a frenzy, jaws snapping through Roman armor as if it were nothing. Truth or rumor, it did not matter. The fear was real. And then came the battle that shattered the illusion of invincibility. The year was 190 BC, Rome against the Seleucid Empire. The field shook with the clash of armies, dust rising in choking clouds, the cries of men and the thunder of hooves mixing into a storm of chaos. And into that storm, Rome unleashed its hounds. They tore into the Seleucid cavalry like living storms of iron and fury. Horses screamed, their riders dragged down, armor ripped open by relentless jaws. For a moment, it seemed as if Rome had summoned nightmares from the underworld itself. But the Seleucids adapted. They raised their bows. Volley after volley of arrows fell from the sky, blackening the sun. The hounds were pierced and broken, their massive bodies collapsing into the dirt. Their handlers, refusing to abandon them, died where they stood, cut down in the rain of shafts. The battlefield that had once roared with the terror of Rome's beasts grew suddenly quieter. And with that silence came the truth. Rome's monsters could bleed. Rome's nightmares could die. The whispers spread faster than the arrows had. The Meletian hounds, once thought unstoppable, were mortal after all. And mortals can be defeated. In the legions, doubt began to fester. Could these beasts truly be controlled? What would happen if, in a frenzy of battle, they turned not on the enemy, but on their own? Fear no longer belonged only to Rome's enemies. It began to creep into Rome itself. There were tales, patrols found torn to pieces in the night, their own hounds standing over them, jaws dripping red. Was it truth? Was it rumor? No one could say. But Rome had always known one truth above all others. Once fear is born, it never truly dies. The war dogs did not vanish all at once. Slowly, almost quietly, they began to fade from the ranks of Rome's legions. There was no great decree, no single battle where they were cast aside. Instead, the empire turned to the discipline of men, to the cold precision of steel. The hounds, once unleashed as living storms, were now chained at the edges of power. They became guards of estates, trophies of senators, hunters for noble villas. No longer weapons of conquest, only symbols of wealth and authority. And yet, at the far edges of empire, in lonely outposts and forgotten battles unrecorded by history, some of them still fought, still bled, still died, loyal until the very end. But as Rome's glory began to crack, so too did the legend of its beasts. The empire that had once built its strength on fear now struggled to hold its own against shadows rising from within. And the hounds, like the empire itself, carried scars too deep to heal. There are stories, whispers of the last of them, of a war dog who refused to leave the body of its fallen master, even as barbarians closed in. Of others who howled into the night, their voices carrying across abandoned camps, until silence swallowed them too. Rome's enemies remembered them as monsters. Rome's soldiers remembered them as brothers in arms. And history chose to forget them altogether. No monuments were raised. No poets sang their names. No triumphs honored their sacrifice. They slipped into shadow, their memories scattered in scraps of parchment and the half-terrified stories of those who survived their fury. And yet, something of them lingers. Picture it once more. A battlefield at dawn. mist curling low, the clash of steel just beginning. And from the shadows, a growl that chills the blood. The sound of something ancient, something primal, stirring again. For Rome's might was not only carried by man. It once walked on four legs. It once wore fangs instead of helmets. It once reminded the world of a truth older than empire, older than law, older than history itself. That sometimes the fiercest weapon is not forged in fire. It is born in flesh. The Roman war dog, loyal, savage, feared, forgotten by history, yet never truly gone. Because even today, when we hear the low growl of a beast in the dark, when the hairs rise on the back of our necks, when something primal in us whispers run, we are not just hearing an animal. We are remembering Rome's most terrible weapon, the hounds of war.